today. Once again, we have Olga Liberti with us, which is an honor, and for the ones who might not know her, I will introduce her to you quickly. But I want to say two things. First of all, that it's an honor. I keep saying this, and you know it is. We have learned so much from Olga, and we keep learning as years go by. And all of you guys that are so young and are here, and I feel really proud that you have decided to join this conversation, which is perhaps something that might seem a little bit out of the pragmatics, out of the the practical side of teaching the language, but it is so essential at the same time. So I'm really happy to see this large audience, and that mostly it is made up of people who are young and who are starting their career, either to be a translator or to be a teacher of English. So keep learning, because that's the only way to develop, to be full professionals as we should. Also, I want to thank the people who have had the chance to be teaching and working for many years and still keep the zeal to learn and to revisit perhaps aspects of the language that we very seldom do in our everyday classes. Well, a little bit about it says discourse analysis, a briefish introduction. We were just saying with Olga that brief is an adjective that might not describe exactly what we're going to be doing today, because it's impossible to be brief dealing with this topic. Anyway, just a little something about Olga. Olga, and I like to say this also, began her English studies at Asociación Cultural Inglesa in Buenos Aires, so there's some kinship there. Throughout her career as a teacher of English, she's taught English and American literature at Juan XXIII and at Escuela Superior de Idiomas, Universidad, Nacional. She also attended a course of literature at the University of Florida. She was the head teacher of Juan XXIII English Department until she retired years ago. It's an honor, it's a pleasure, and straight to the top. Thank you, Olga.
Okay. Hello, how are you? Thanks for coming. I hope that my talk is up to your expectations. To begin with, I want to add something to what Sandra said. It says brief introduction. The original title was an introduction to discourse analysis, but it's important. It's impossible to introduce discourse analysis in an hour and a half or 2 hours. A whole course of discourse analysis will take 60 or 70 hours at least. And the problem with shortening the topic so that to cover it is that we would leave many topics out, and they are necessary, for these are not only topics in discourse analysis. This is the development of any course on discourse analysis. We must touch upon all these topics. So I will do it, however briefly, very briefly. I will mention some of them, because especially 2 and 3, 4, they need exercises. And now there is no time to do exercises, but this is something that you can do on your own. And I cannot avoid Saussure, because everything started with Saussure. Linguistics proper, as we know it now, it started with him. And to arrive at critical discourse analysis, it would be impossible if we didn't start with Saussure, because Saussure means a revolution in linguistics. And besides, I have a great interest in some of the topics. Some of them because you can work on them reading material and doing exercises, but some others because they interest me in particular, and because I would like to add certain things that normally do not appear in the general texts that we use. Well, I suppose that all of you know something about sociology. Have you read anything about him, or anybody? Well, we start then with the beginning of the 20th century, because he was a Swiss linguist, and he gave courses at the University of Geneva in 1911, so over 100 years ago. And he died young. He died 2 years later in 1913, and so indeed he didn't write this book, the famous book, Course in General Linguistics. It was his students, the ones who collected all his classes and then made a book. So it was not he who wrote the book. Now, why to begin with Saussure, that is with a linguist that occupied himself with language so many years ago? Because what he did was to perform without, of course it was not his intention, but he indeed effected a revolution in linguistics. Why? Because thanks to Saussure, we no longer think, or many linguists at that time, stopped thinking of language as an aggregate of separate units. And language is not that. We tend to forget it many of times. We think that language is made of words. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. That's not true. Language is a unified field in which all the elements are in relation to one another. We cannot sum up the elements. We put them in relation to one another. And this was a revolution because nobody had thought of language in that way up to Saussure, who was the one who initiated that. Now, these individual parts that are in relation to one another are so diachronically, that is with the passing of time along history, and synchronically. If you take language, any language, at any moment in history, at that moment, language is absolutely adequate, complete and perfect. The complete and perfect according to the needs of the persons of the community that speaks that language. Another important idea in sociolinguistics is the distinction between langue and parole. Langue is the system. You have heard these two words, I suppose, many a time, no? Langue and parole. Langue is the system, and parole are the individual uses by people, by speakers of this system. So he compares, and this is a very interesting because it is very clear, he uses a metaphor. He says that langue as a system is like the collection of rules of chess, and parole is each game of chess. That is, chess does not chess does not exist in the rules, but the rules are necessary so that we can play it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to play. The same with the language. This difference between this distinction, not difference between langue and parole, is what later Chomsky will call competence and performance. That you already have heard about. The concentration on the differential basis of meaning is created by, that is, meaning is created by differences, not by similarities. So the first example, or one of the first examples, is he took from phonology. The meaning of king and king is different because and are different, not because in are similar. This happens in all languages, and we call them binary oppositions. I suppose that's something else that you have heard. That is, language does not inhere in the material substance of the words, but in a larger and abstract meaning of signs. Now, what is a sign? A sign has two faces, the signifier and the signified. The signified is the concept we have in our heads, according to our knowledge of the world. And the signifier is the sound image. This is what the words that Saussure uses, sound image, because he paid special attention to oral language rather than to written language. So, signifier and signified. So, language is a system of signs that express ideas. What are signs then? Signs are symbols. And being symbols, they stand for something else. That's why we have to conclude that language is not representational in the sense that it does not present again any reality. Language is representational altogether, not representational, but representational. Each element in language stands for something else. Language is language. Language is its own reality. There's no linguistic reality beyond language. I insist on this because this is necessary to remember always, not only as teachers of language, when we deal with any other subject. Discourse analysis is, in that sense, very important. It is important to remember this, that language does not present any reality again. It symbolizes a reality that is not itself. Language is one reality, and this reality out here is a different reality. It's our real world. Well, I suppose that, no, I forgot to say one thing about the sign. The sign is always arbitrary, because the example he gives is that there is no cat in the word cat. Remember this. There is no reason for using a particular word to name a certain object, whether abstract or material. Well, and then another thing is the value of a sign is determined by the other signs that accompany it. On a syntagmatic level, the syntagmatic level is the horizontal level. The cat is on the mat, according to the example that philosophers of language always use. The cat is on the mat, that's syntagmatic. Cat is not mat. But also, it depends on the associated or paradigmatic level. It says the cat is on the mat, and it doesn't say the dog is on the floor. There is a paradigm of nouns that could substitute cat according to circumstances, or that could substitute cat. So these are the two ways in which language organizes itself, syntagmatically and paradigmatically. Now, on the syntagm, cat is cat because it is not there, it is not is, it is not on, it is not mat. So, a sign, the most precise characteristic of a sign is that it is what all the others are not, whether on the syntagm or along the paradigm. I don't know if I have been clear, but these are the most important ideas. So we can conclude that in language there are all the relationships are differences. There are no similarities. Language means because of difference. Now, the case is that this theory of Saussure has certain limitations. The main one is that he minimized discourse. That is, he minimized the use of language. There was so much, but they had to insist to other linguists so much about the systems and the abstractions of the system, that language is a system, that it is abstract, etc., 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 that he didn't pay attention to what users do with the language. Now, but it is precisely discourse or parole, or the way we want to call it, and remember it, whether oral, both oral and written. Discourse, parole is the one who creates language, that creates that creates language. All signs are created and altered by discourse, and there are many, Bakhtin, another linguist that I suppose that you have heard, at least you have heard his name, said the sign cannot be separated from the social situations. That is, a sign means something for somebody else. Otherwise, why would we say cat? Why would we create a word for this? For instance, that I don't know what it is called, but anyway, I suppose there is a word for this. Why would we create? Because if we want to speak about this, we need something to name it, and to name it for whom? For others. So the use of language is always social. This is what does not appear in sociology. We give an example taken from Spanish for you to see that the variations take place in speech or in discourse. I suppose that all of us know that the verb haber in Spanish, meaning existence, is singular. Es, hay una silla, hay dos sillas. If it is singular in the present, it should be singular in all other tenses. Hubo una persona, hubo dos personas. Han habido excesos, ha habido un exceso. Siempre, cualquiera sea el tiempo, singular. No tiene plural. El verbo es ese, es el verbo hay. Sin embargo, todos nosotros hemos escuchado el uso de hubieron. No en el presente es hay una persona y dos personas. Pero en el pasado hubo una persona, hubieron varios. Y se usa, lo usan los periodistas, se usa en radio, se usa en los diarios, lo leemos. Bueno, what happens? That's a change that is not taking place in the system. The system remains what it is. I, hubo. Now, if at a certain moment a number of speakers or users of the language conform what it is called in physics and in linguistics critical mass, this will be accepted. It will be standardized, the system will accept it, and it will be part of the system. It will be included in the system. That it will be right to say hubo y hubieron. So far it is wrong because it has not appeared in the RAE, no? El diccionario de la Real Academia Española. It has not appeared yet. If it appears, it is that the number of users has achieved the critical mass necessary for the change. So, that is, using language requires one participation in a communal system of users of that language, which is historically specific. We nowadays do not speak the language, the Spanish that spoke Cervantes, for instance, and culturally, also culturally specific, because our Spanish, el español rioplatense, is not the same Spanish that is spoken in Spain. Bueno, his attention to language overpowered prevented him from considering that while signs are regulated by the system, they are created and transformed by discourse, that is by the use of language. And here I will add, just to finish with the Saussure and his limitations, something that the linguist, philosopher, French linguist or philosopher Derrida says that it is interesting to add to these limitations of Saussure. Suppose, as I say, I saw the cat coming in. There is no problem in filling in the signs. No? I is me, Olga, at this moment. Suppose I say, I saw the cat coming in. And the cat is the one I have seen. The cat that inhabits here, this house. But suppose I have uttered this sentence now, here in front of all of you. So it is easy to understand who I is and to what cat I am referring. Now, suppose that you don't know me, you don't know that we are here, that we have joined here at the library, and somebody passes by and hears somebody saying, yeah, I saw the cat coming in. It is the same sentence, it is also spoken, but the person doesn't know who said it. So the I is an empty sign for him, the cat is also an empty sign. And the same happens if we write. When you write, and this is very, very important for teachers of language and also for students of literature, when you see a sentence, I saw the cat coming in, there is no person to fill in the sign I, and there is no object to fill in the sign cat. That is, in Derrida's words, he says that written language makes obvious, makes evident what speech conceals. The absence of the signatory, that is the absence of the person who made himself responsible for the utterance, and the absence of the referent. If I say cat, what is the referent of cat? Which cat is it? Okay. Well, this is all I can say nowadays at this moment about Saussure. It is very, very interesting. You can read perhaps the course or perhaps any other text that deals with Saussure. There is a very interesting text. I have used it with my students, which is structuralism and semiotics. I will have to make a list of texts, and I can leave it here with Sandra or with Patricia. There are a few pages about Saussure, but it is very clearly explained. So it is, if you want to read, to fix the ideas, let's say, you can resort to this book. Bueno, the second point is textual analysis. Now we have been speaking of abstractions, the system, no? And now what we have in front of us is a text, something written, or you are hearing me giving or uttering a text. Now, we teachers of language know that sentences, to be meaningful, must have a certain structure. At least the very simple structure, at least in English, subject, verb, object. Also, if we can think of a structure from the point of view of information. This is something that you also know, and speak of theme and rhyme from the point of view of the user, of the speaker, and given anew from the point of view of the listener. But a text is constituted not by one sentence or by isolated sentence. A text, to be a text, is constituted by a sequence of sentences. And so these sentences might be joined somehow to one another. This is what we do, and will not go into details because this is textual analysis. Once you have a text, there you will find in the booklet a very long list of cohesive devices. That is, they do not belong in the structure. The structure, if it is subject, verb, object, would be a cat, a mouse. But you know that there are other words that are necessary to make the sentence cohesive, to make it a proper sentence. The cat ate a mouse, or the cat ate the mouse, or a mouse, or a cat ate a mouse. These elements that we add to the bare structure of a sentence are non-structural. They do not belong in the structure of the sentence, but they are devices that we use to complete sentences, to make them meaningful, and to join sentences to one another. As you see there, the cohesive devices or text forming devices are the ones that you find there in the booklet. Reference is one, ellipsis and substitution, conjunctions, you have a long list of all the possible conjunctions that can join a text. This is usage, that is, at another moment I can give you a text for you to analyze all the possible cohesive devices. It seems too long, but when the texts are complex, it is all these conjunctions are necessary. And then the last one is lexical cohesion. Lexical cohesion is a very interesting topic. No, we are not going to deal with it. But suppose that you find a text and the title of the text is I don't know, the purification of water. I know nothing about it. But there are certain words that that compose the lexical keys that you expect to appear. I don't know. I don't know the procedures, no? But I suppose that there may be something like clean water, fresh water, pipes, I don't know. These words are what constitute the lexical field of a text. And they must cohere. Suppose that you are reading a text on water purification and you come across the word water. Apparently, unless the text makes it clear with following clauses, it does not belong in the field that the text demands. But that's very clear if you do exercises. Otherwise, it is speaking is very tricky to speak this way. This opposing fields is very interesting when analyzing literary texts. Complex literary text. Suppose that maybe you remember that I always insisted to my students that a text without a conflict is not literary. That literature depends on conflict between the characters. All right. If the texts are literary, there are passages in which you will analyze precisely opposing fields. That is, there will be semantic fields that corresponds to the two participants, to the usually participants who have a confrontation in the text. That's, I think that of all the others are quite mechanic. The demonstratives and all the other references, especially the one of conjunctions. But this is very interesting to do. And luckily we don't have time to do it today. It is very interesting. The following topic, because so far we are on the surface of the text, the following topic is local and global documents. And here, though we will not discuss it in depth. But here we speak of sequence of sentences with or without cohesive devices, but however, the text is coherent, because cohesion is one aspect of text analysis. The other is coherence, that's glue. The sentence may be cohesive, there may be cohesion between one sentence and the next. Bueno, but the whole text, is it coherent? It will depend on the relations between the different sentences that are being different. Now we don't speak. When we reach this topic, we no longer speak of sentences because sentences are grammatical objects, while then we speak of propositions. Sentences as grammatical objects may be true or false, because they are statements. Those that are statements may be true or false. In this case, propositions are possible facts. Why? Because the sentence itself, taken alone, may not be meaningful, but taken in the whole text, it will acquire meaning. I always remember one example that I normally use, which is very clear. Suppose that you come across or you hear the utterance, John thinks with a knife. It's absolutely absurd. As an independent utterance, it is absurd. Nobody thinks with a knife. We all think with our brains, don't we? But suppose that this belongs in a text, that it is not an isolated sentence. You have heard it isolatedly, but it belongs in a text. Somebody has asked, what does who do you think that killed the man? John thinks with a knife. How the man was killed? John thinks with a knife. John thinks that he was killed with a knife. And so the sentence as a sentence is meaningless. But as a proposition, it is a possible fact. Because the rest of the text has completed it. There are many ways. Sometimes the cohesive devices do not appear. Suppose that I say there was a storm yesterday. Period. Our sidewalk was covered with branches and leaves. There is no cohesive device there. There are two independent sentences. Can we join them? Are they coherent? Yes, we can. No? The relationship is causal. As there was a storm yesterday, our sidewalk. Or there was a storm yesterday, so. And the same with many other examples. Sometimes it is easy, though the cohesive device is not there, sometimes it is easy to supply it because it depends on our knowledge of the world. Some other times we need or we expect that we will find in the text a third sentence that will make some other sentences clearer or coherent. Suppose that somebody says, it was a hot day, so I went to the zoo. The sentence by itself is not, it is correctly structured, but it is not very meaningful. But you may find another proposition in the text that tells you that the zoo is a shady, cool place, etc., and so these two isolated propositions will make sense. This is what, I will not speak of global coherence because here it is absolutely necessary to do some exercises, to make it clear, because there are macro rules, etc., etc. But this is what we call coherence. the coherence of a whole text, even if the cohesive devices are not present. It is not necessary to use cohesive devices. And mind you, one of the things that I recommend you not to use is and, because you normally shouldn't seem to resort only to this way of joining sentences. And once I read, and I use it with my students, that the only text that makes sense using the conjunction and only is the Bible. The Bible, because the Bible speaks of miracles, and miracles don't need to be explained. So you can use and, ceaseless. Well, this information that we add or that we expect to find in the text or that we add ourselves depends on our knowledge of the world. And we can do it. Suppose that you read, John took his linguistics exam yesterday. The professor was very kind or treated him kindly. Grammatically, it should be a professor because it's the first time that it appears. So you cannot use the term. But what happens? That our knowledge of the world tells us that in an exam situation, there is always a professor who is the professor, the only one that counts there. That's why it is correct, grammatically correct to say there. Or it is not grammatically correct, but it is coherent. Textually, it is correct to say. Bueno, I'm sorry, but I have to stop here. Because, I will stop here because I want to add a topic to this local and global coherence that normally is not taken into account. I must, well, this comes from Umberto Eco. Those who were with me in other talks heard me name him, who besides being a writer was a semiotician. And here, with Eco, following Eco, we speak of possible worlds, not just of knowledge of the world, the creation of possible worlds in which any, at least many propositions may be correct and may be not correct, may be coherent. He uses this way of speaking of our world as our world is the real world, no? And so W0. A possible world is W1, W2, whatever the number of possible worlds we create. These are there. We know that there are other possible worlds besides this world we live in. One is the world of dreams. All of us know. They are not material. It is not a material world, but it is real. While we are dreaming, we are really living in that world. And the other is the world of fiction. The W1, that is a possible world, exists not in the sense that I exist at the moment or that this pencil exists, because they are cultural constructions, and as such, they are abstract, but they are real, because not all that is not material is unreal. No, they are real. They are expressed in a series of propositions, like our own world, when you want to describe it, and they are filled with individuals that are endowed with properties, like we human beings, and have similar properties and who perform actions. This is what happens in the world of dreams and in the world of fiction. Now, what happens then, thinking of possible worlds, when we come across a fairy tale or a science fiction story? It is astonishing, but we accept the world that that are created by fairy tales or by science fiction story more than we accept our real world, our world, without the existence of certain things in this world. We don't touch them, but we accept all that. What we accept is that everything that a fairy tale says is true in the context, is true in that world, not in ours. And there are characters with their properties and performing actions. They are sometimes they are very similar to our own. Sometimes they are not. However, does anybody have any doubt that Sherlock Holmes' address was 221B Baker Street? No, we would never doubt that. We take that for granted. The text says it, and it is true. Does anybody doubt that the grandmother of Little Red Riding Hood was alive, though the wolf had eaten her? Tell me if you doubt it. No. When you read the story, you accept it, because that's a possible world that is coherent within its own context. This is the idea of possible worlds that goes a bit beyond knowledge of the world. Now, however, no possible world we create is totally autonomous. It always superimposes our own world. The reasons, the main reason is one of economy. Suppose that somebody asks you to enumerate every and all single elements in our real world. All. Is that possible? No, that would be impossible. So, in the same way, it would be impossible and unnecessary. So, in the same way, it is unnecessary to invent a world creating every single element in it. No? So, that's why we speak of economy. And I think that this is, I didn't find this in Echo, but I think that there are psychological reasons also. We can't depict what we don't know. By hearsay or because we have seen it. And I always think of a word like vacuum. So I can imagine about the vacuum that a physicist creates in his lab. A vacuum in a container. So a contained vacuum with limits. Can you imagine a limitless vacuum, as the physicists say, then our whole universe is surrounded by a vacuum? No, it is impossible. It is impossible because it does not exist in our world. No? So it is impossible to imagine it. And another thing that I also find interesting when discussing this topic precisely is painting. Have you ever seen a painting in which God has any form that is not like a human being? No. Because we can't imagine something, a being that has no materiality. Because nothing of that exists in our world. And this is very personal, but as I was collecting these ideas, I remember that when I was a child, a very young child, and I heard the word soul, I wanted to imagine the soul, but the soul is abstract. And so I imagined that we have it inside our chest, and that it had the shape of a white cross. Why? Because I knew what a cross was, but soul, who has in it? What is the materiality of a soul? So, I think that psychologically we are limited to create. We are limited by our knowledge of the world. Bueno. Now, one thing that I didn't mention when speaking of sequence of sentences and the way they cohere, even when there are no cohesive devices, is that we are there in this third topic of local and global coherence. We are already dealing with something that is always mentioned but never seen: semantics. That is meaning. Why do certain sentences which have no cohesive devices and which apparently are not coherent, why can make sense? Perhaps because we create another statement or another proposition, and so they make sense. What we are trying to do is to bring to the surface meaning. Meaning is not seen. Meaning is never evident, but we speak because we want to mean. Otherwise we wouldn't speak. If we didn't want to mean something by means of the words we use. And the one who deals, and I advise you to read his book, Functional Grammar, who deals with aspects of semantics and how semantics it appears on the surface of the structures, on the surface of the language, is wonderful. It is a wonderful theory. It would demand another meeting and perhaps a longer one, but I advise you to read his text, Functional Grammar. That's the text. And there he says, one of the chapters, a language is a system for making meanings, a semantic system with other systems for encoding the meanings it produces. So, the meaning system is the semantic system, but we need other aspects of the language to encode this meaning, because otherwise this meaning does not appear anywhere. It is always hidden. It is never evident. And so he speaks of three layers: the phonological, that is the sounds and the words we use, and the lexicogrammatical. These two layers encode the third. Thanks to these two layers, the phonological and the lexicogrammatical, meaning becomes evident. We see meaning, but we see it not in itself as something else, but as a surface structure, as the sentences that are produced by this, that encode this other layer. He speaks then of three. I want to reach at least to introduce something to reach a part in which it will become evident how grammar manages to actualize meaning, to actualize semantics. He speaks of three meta-functions. It is an utterance, a proposition, a clause, which is the unit of analysis for Halliday, performs three functions. The ideational, which is the content of ideas of the text and the logical relationship between these ideas. In the interpersonal function, language as when we assume the linguistic circumstance with another person, we participate in a linguistic circumstance. And the textual function, we use language to materialize the other function, to make a text. Well, all right. Then the clauses acquire structure according to these meta functions. And so, the clause structure, the structure of a clause derives from these three meta functions, which may appear the three together in a clause, or two, or only one. No, it is according to the needs of the speaker or writer. These are the first one, which I mentioned, the ideation, the one that speaks of all the things that we have in mind that we want to transmit, is the transitivity structure, clause as representation. The other, when we engage in a linguistic situation or in a communicative situation, is the modal structure, clause as exchange. And the last one, the clause as message, is the textual structure. I mean, that derives from the texture. This is what I want to explain to you so that you can see it. Let's say the transitivity structure, the one in which the clause describes or transmits what we have in mind and the logical relationship between our ideas. It is a configuration of our experience, and it comprises processes, participants, and circumstances. Processes are actualized in the verbal group. Participants are actualized in the nominal group, and circumstances are actualized in the adverbial group or the prepositional phrases if they appear. It is not a case. So you see that when you use a sentence and you use a subject, a verb, and circumstances in which the action occurs, this is grammatically the grammar that appears on the sentence, subject, verb, object, suppose, and circumstances, derives from this ideational function. It is the way we have grammatically to put meaning in motion, to put our ideas on the surface, on the grammatical surface of a sentence. Is that clear? Because I think that it is absolutely interesting, no? Because then you understand grammar not as simply a capricious idea of certain grammarians. No, but grammar is the way we put all that we are using language through grammar. This, I will repeat, this first meta function, which is the transitivity structure, the one in which you tell what you think of the word. And says, no, I think that the word is wrong and not right. Suppose that that's the sentence. There are nominal group. There is a nominal group that the grammatical sentence demands. In this case, it is I. There is a verbal group, which is I think, that the grammatical sentence demands. Well, I have not used circumstances. Circumstances, adverbial groups may or may not appear. I would advise you again to read Halliday if you want to understand the way grammar is used, not capriciously as a series of rules, but it is used to put semantics in evidence. Because it is not simply a grammatical sentence, it is the evidence of meaning. It's the only way to make it evident. But of course there are other structures. One is another one is the interpersonal, in which we speak of modes, that is statements, interrogatives, imperatives, orders, requests, etc. Also, the interpersonal function is shown by the use of you. If you address another person, that's the interpersonal function. So, I want to speak with you, and you say you. And also evaluative items. For example, you say honestly or pretty or etc. And then the theme structure is the one that you know that the sentence is organized as information. Theme and dream, theme and dream. Well, again, read hurriedly. Read hurriedly. And then you may read whatever text about semantics. But this is semantics. Semantics is this meaning. Sometimes normally I know this, normally when we are teaching a course in linguistics or something like that, we avoid semantics. I think that the one who makes it very, very clear how semantics makes use of grammar to say, here I am semantics, I am the meaning, but without grammar it wouldn't be evident. That's why I recommend you to read. Then you can read anything about semantics, but this is, I think that this is best to understand what semantics is. Well, and then I said at the beginning when speaking of Saussure that he paid so much attention to all the abstractions of the system, etc., that he left out almost the analysis of the use of language, that is the analysis of pattern. And so now we come to this topic, which is pragmatics, and in which what we have to discuss is subjectivity. Subjectivity in discourse. So now, though, when we speak of the context, that there is always a context that will make a sentence or a statement clear, etc., or meaningful. Well, there is no agreement on how many elements a context may include. But at least the participants, the spatial and temporal frame, and the objective of the linguistic exchange. Now, the subject that had been expelled from the linguistic proper by Saussure now come to take a very relevant part, because if we were not users of a language, Spanish would disappear. At least this variety of Spanish would never be spoken again. You know this, and there are many dead languages, and so why? Because there are no speakers of the language. Maybe there are records, but nobody speaks them, so they cannot change. And precisely the aspect of linguistics that studies that includes the subjects, the uses of language, is pragmatics. Pragmatics studies the linguistic behavior of individuals and their roles in discourse. There, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you will find yes, the first page of the book, in which you have this is the bueno, never mind. You have heard that. I'm sure that you are acquainted with some topics that include pragmatics or subjectivity in discourse. The use of deixis or deixis, the pronunciation is up to you. That is the use of personal pronouns, which are the participants in the exchange, I, you. Temporal deixis, which is now, then, now, present, then, past, or future, and spatial deictic, which is here and there. All the three are anchored or rooted in the event that constitutes the act of enunciation. What is an act of enunciation? Is the act of, there is no better definition, this is one that is is the act of putting language in motion by an individual act of usage. That is, When you came in and I sat down and Sandra finished her presentation, I said, hello, good afternoon, thanks for coming. My act of enunciation is my decision to use language in this particular circumstance, no? So the enunciations is prior to the utterance, because enunciation is to put language in motion, and that's that. That's why all these deictic or deictic terms have to do or are anchored in the particular situation of the enunciation. Who enunciates? In this case, I. Where? Here. When? Now. So this subject, which has been expelled from language, is now what we call the deictic center, because here means thanks to me. If I'm speaking, I'm using language, I have put language in motion, then I, me, is a deictic center. And when I say here, I mean here, not any place where you are. And if I say there, I'm speaking of something that is away from me. The deictic center is the one that determines that that if a term is distal or proximal. Now is proximal. Here is proximal. Then and there are distal terms. Well, all these expressions, and this is another aspect of subjectivity in language, point at something, at elements that are extra-linguistic. Here in linguistic means in the place where the speaker is. But if I say here, what do you understand? It's not, you do not understand the place where the speaker is. You understand this place, the library, I suppose. Well, so all these terms point at an extra linguistic reality, what is outside. Evaluations are also forms in which subjectivity shows itself in discourse, no? In opposition to the ixias, instead of being external to, they are also external to language, but they reveal something that is internal to the speaker. And so they may be derogatory or laudatory terms. Suppose that I say, pretty ugly, or any other. Like and appreciate, those are favorable. Or hate and fear, unfavorable. There are also neutral terms. One thing is to say he said, and quite another is to say he murmured, he screamed, he shrieked, etc., etc. Well, and now we come to something that luckily I have given Patricia to introduce in the booklet, and which is this. Jacobson's or Jacobson's, not Jacobson's as the Americans say, because he was a Russian linguist. These linguistic functions. These are all the elements that are necessary for a message to function as such, or to produce a message, rather. The addressor, the addressee, the context, that is when we speak of something that is outside, the message, that is the language we produce to say something, the medium, we speak or we write or we use the telephone, or the cell. And the code. The code is the language that we use. And he speaks then of, well, no, it is not here, but I will. He speaks of the different functions that a message may perform. There may be all together, or there may be two, or only one. It doesn't make any difference. if the emphasis is on the addressor, that is one of the elements in the linguistic exchange, the function is emotive. I will give you an example. Bahía Blanca is a long way from my home. That would be emotive. I'm expressing my feelings. If the emphasis is on the context, something outside, the message is referential. Bahía Blanca is 700 kilometers from Buenos Aires. That's a reference to the real. If the emphasis is on the message, the function is poetic, because the message calls attention to itself. Only poetry or literature may call attention to itself, normally. In the other, when the emphasis is on the addressee, the function is called conative or vocative, and you want to call the attention of the addressee. Look, listen, etc. And if it is on the contact, it is fatigue. You want to know if the contact functions. You want to know if you want to make contact, let's say. You want to make linguistic contact. And so you say, good morning. You expect to be answered. No? What a nice day. Those are ways of seeing if the contact functions. And when the emphasis is on the code, that is on language itself, it is metalingual. In the case of the message is written with double S. That's a meta. So there are six elements that constitute a linguistic exchange, and six linguistic functions that each one performs according to the emphasis put there. Not all the six appear in one utterance, but more than one may appear. And now I remember that there is a novel by a French author whose title is La séptima función del lenguaje. Es como una especie de policial entre lingüistas. Es para lingüistas, para gente que tiene algún conocimiento de lengua. Somebody has, because so far there are 6 functions according to Jacobson, and they are still used. And somebody has discovered that there is a 7th function in language, and whoever can use it can, I think that it is, will be all powerful, will have power all over the world. And even, I suppose that you know the linguist, semiotician Roland Barthes died in an accident. He was run down by a car. Well, in this case, he was assassinated because apparently he already knew this. And it's a very, very nice book, but for the persons who are interested in linguistics. But remember, in case you are interested, is la séptima función del lenguaje. Bueno, and then, I guess here you have all the functions here. And if you turn the page, at the end is the critique and update of Jacobson's linguistic functions. Those who attended some other talk with me will remember that I use a very similar diagram when speaking of literature. Because after all, literature is made of language, so there is no escape from it. And bueno, this is the way. The idea is that in Jacobson's linguistic functions, what is missing is the noise. Whenever there is an interference in the message, there is that we call noise. So the message is spoiled. And there are many kinds of noises. Suppose that I stopped speaking in English and I started speaking Russian. do you know Russian? No. Can you speak it? No. Well, that would be a very serious interference, so that the message would not reach you. Whenever we don't have the same abilities to produce language, there are noises. Suppose that I was speaking to children who are 8 years old. They will not understand, and not because they are not intelligent, but simply because they don't know what I'm talking about. Bueno, those are obvious cases. There are other cases which are not obvious, so obvious, but that we, especially teachers, must bear in mind. It's not that the students are not intelligent or are lazy, but some of them are. But not all the time. Sometimes it much depends on us, no? On us teachers, whether they pay attention or they work or not. But anyway, it is impossible, and here is some other item that I will also introduce in critical discourse analysis. Except in the case of two close friends, linguistic exchanges are never symmetric. There is a difference, and here you have all the difference, no? There may be no coincidence between the linguistic and paralinguistic competence between the two persons who partake the insult. And there are ideological and cultural competence which are different. Suppose that a person who has not completed his primary school, speaking with I don't know, with a lawyer who uses the specific language of law. Very difficult it would be to explain. Or people who do not speak Spanish very well because they belong, I don't know, Mapuche community, and they speak their language, and that have to come to trial. It's very difficult to understand, no? And it doesn't mean that people are not intelligent or that people don't want to understand. Simply that the possibilities are not the same, no? And that would be a way of completing what is missing in Jacobs's diagram. And I want to add two concepts that very seldom appear in discourse analysis. One is dialogism. That is, language is always a dialogue. We speak to communicate. Even if it is a monologue, we are speaking to ourselves, to the wall, or to an imaginary listener, or to our husband who is not present, but we are angry with him, or with our father because we want to ask him to lend us the car, etc., etc. There is always dialogue, whether we are speaking, we are alone, or we are taking part in an exchange. And again, bueno, this idea that language is always interactive is also an idea that Bakhtin introduced in language. Let me see. I like the way he begins one of his explanation when he says the locutor is not Adam. Of course, Adam is the only one who, for a certain time, he was alone in paradise until he was created. So, if he didn't speak to God, or he spoke to himself. Anyway, his language was dialogical. Perhaps he didn't know. Perhaps he remained silent because he didn't have a partner. Well, and it says, he says, every enunciation, even in the fixed written form, is an answer to something and is constructed as such. It is no more than a link in the chain of speech acts. And a very interesting example, I don't know whether you are acquainted with it, is the essay. Argentina is perhaps the Spanish-speaking countries the one whose writers use essay as a form of as their form of communicating with one another. Think simply of all the essays produced about or produced by Borges. Each essay that is produced discussing Borges's literature is an answer to Borges himself or to some other essay that has also been written. And the best example in Argentine culture is Ezequiel Martínez Estrada. He wrote many things, because he wrote plays, he wrote poetry, and he wrote wonderful short stories. But he wrote mainly essays that are bad books, no? And that are answers to other essays and were the cause of plenty of other essays. Well, so Martin is right. Not even in the fixed form of writing we can escape the situation of exchanging messages. And another, just to finish this aspect of pragmatics, is polyphony. And again, we have to mention Bakhtin because he was the first to use the term to indicate that a text consists not of only one voice. He used the term in his literary studies, especially Dostoevsky's novels, in which there are many voices, but none of them is dominant. Those who attended literature with me will remember The Sound and the Fury. That would be an excellent example of polyphony. And this idea of polyphony is in linguistics is that the one who speaks, or the user of the language at a certain moment, is not responsible for what he said, for his utterance. One clear example is precisely reported speech or indirect speech. He said that I am not responsible for what he said. I am simply stating what he said. That would be a clear case. And in writing is the use of inverted commas, quotations, allusions, etc. That would be explicit polyphony. Now, there is also an implicit polyphony. All of us are born into a culture. We are not the first to speak the language and to express the values of that culture. We are repeating, and I don't mean that we are not, that we cannot be original, that we are never creative. No, that has nothing to do. But what we should be conscious of is precisely that we are speaking the language of others also. When you repeat something that you have learned from your mother, it is not wrong, but it is polyphony. All right. Bueno. And there is one last topic in subjectivity, but I don't know what time it is. I suppose it's somewhat late, and I would like to leave with this one, which is the newest, let's say. The last topic in subjectivity in language is Austrian's speech act. And I suppose that all of you are acquainted with Austrian's. Are you? Have you ever heard of a speech act? Well, speech acts are the acts in which language performs the act mentioned by the verb. I promise I will come tomorrow, and So it is a promise, and it is understood as a promise. And so he says that this is a performative. That language is divided then into constatives, the ones that are statements that can be true or false, and performative, the one that perform the action they mention. Finally, in the last step of his analysis, he discovered, and I think he's right, that all language is performative, and that constatives are a special kind of performative, because they can always be preceded by, hereby I affirm that the cat is on the mat. The cat is on the mat is the example used by philosophers of language precisely as an example of a constative, let's say. Of course, no, I will not speak. I will not say anything against about Austin, because it would make it very, very long, and I want to say at least a few words about the last topic. What is interesting is that in the same way that we find fault with Saussure, with Jacobson, etc., we can find fault also with Austin, because what he wanted to do is to avoid the participant intention in the language. That is, language does what it does independently of our intention in using it. But then he established a certain felicity conditions, etc., etc., and there is a series. What we can agree with him is on the fact that all language is performative, and that constatives are a special kind of performatives. But he says that only if the procedure is taken fully and seriously, and he leaves many things aside. No? So I can, if you attend a marriage ceremony, you know that there are certain conditions that must be fulfilled, so that you, at the end, when he says, I declare you man and wife, you are really man and wife, if all the conditions have been fulfilled. But suppose, and this is what other philosophers of language added, but if you hear the same sentence in a play, for instance, is it a performative or not? Well, that's a question to decide. No, nobody has decided it yet. I think that it is a performative between the characters. Right. Not between the actor and actress, but between the characters, yes, it is a performance. And the same happens when we discuss the perlocutionary effect of the act. The perlocutionary effect is the effect that the act, the performative may have on the listener. No? Suppose that you tell somebody, could you lend me a pen? Yes. Is it a fake performative or not? It depends. If you consider that it is a question, it is a question. And the hearer understood it as a question, and so he answered the question. In that sense, it has accomplished the rules of Austin. But as you see, there are aspects even of his theory that should be discussed. All that have produced essays and discussions, etc., because Austin is not having. Bueno, and I will finish. Sorry to have taken it too long. This is the last step in analysis, in discourse analysis. Not only the last step because it is the newest, not only historically or temporarily, but also because it draws upon all the other topics that we have mentioned. Nothing can be left out, because you know that the word critical comes from the verb to critique, not to criticize. And to critique is to evaluate, to assess, to discuss, etc., just as to know perfectly well the object that you have in hand, or the object of study that you have chosen. Bueno, so this critical discourse analysis uses all, from Saussure to Austin, from I don't know, from Holiday to Derrida, everything. Because one of the things that it is necessary to do is to know the text on which you are going to work perfectly well. That's why also this textual analysis is necessary, and the analysis of local and global coherence is also necessary to see if there are performances of the constative, etc., etc. The difference between critical discourse analysis and discourse analysis as such is that the central topic of a critical discourse analysis is the relation between language and power. That would be the best way to define critical discourse analysis. It is precisely this. We know, we should start with the evident, or at least a very common idea that society is divided into classes. We know this. They may be somewhat concealed or not, but we do not belong to the same social class. That is, not all of us have the same political and economic power. None of us here, I think, is as powerful as the Pagani family, the owners of alcohol. I think that they are more powerful and richer than all of us together are. Did you know that? It's the Pagani family, the ones that are. Bueno. And this power, this social power, which is political and economic, is, as I have said, unequally distributed. And how is it exercised? This is what is interesting. How is this social power exercised? By means of coercion. There are two ways. Coercion is one. Coercion is the use of repressive forces, so that you impose your power on others by means of repressive forces. And the other is by consent. Consent depends on ideology, then I will say something about ideology. On ideology, and ideology is seen in discourse. That is, discourse is used to question social power or to confirm social power. Both. And I will make it clear that when we use ideology in the sense that it is used in critical discourse analysis, we are not referring only to political ideology. That would be one aspect of ideology. But ideology is the whole set of beliefs, convictions, ideas, principles, prejudices that all of us have. None can say, I have no ideology. That's not true. You may have no political ideology. That is, you do not adhere to any political party, but you have an ideology. All of us have. And what is then, any of these two methods are used for ideological power. Ideological power is the power to project over society one's ideology, one's ideas as universal and common sense. For instance, I will give you some examples to make it clear. In Western societies, when we speak of democracy, we speak of representative democracy. That is, remember that the Constitution says, el pueblo no delibera ni gobierna sino por medio de sus representantes. Representative democracy. But suppose that we started to question this kind of democracy. We wanted to have a share in it. We wanted to have a share in power. What is called in English power sharing democracy. We want to participate. So there is not just one kind of democracy as we have thought so far, and power has made that thing. There may be some other kind of democracy. One thing that you should remember when you deal with critical discourse analysis is precisely that all that we discuss in discourse is man-made, because it is culture. Culture is not nature. Nature is given by nature, by God if you believe in God. But culture is culture, and it is man-made. Whatever is man-made can be changed. It may be very, very difficult, but it can be changed. Another example, for instance, is the word ideology, the one I have used. Some years ago, ideology was a synonym for totalitarianism. Sometimes it is also used in that sense. We know that it is not, that that's not the meaning, because society has changed. No? And another example that we have very, very near is the idea of what a true woman is. Until, suppose, mid-20th century, the place of a woman was the home. A woman had to be mother and wife. Is it so now?
No.
Because she has this idea is man-made, because it is cultural, culture has changed. With, of course, with many struggles and much effort. But it may be changed. That is, whatever is cultural must be changed, or may be changed. And just to finish, some other topics that critical discourse analysis addresses. One is that language is part of society. It's not something outside, no? It's not something extra, non-social, no. Language is part of society, for we speak, read, and write in socially determined ways. Here, for instance, I'm speaking to you as a lecturer. I'm not speaking as a mother, though I am a mother. Because it is socially determined, the way I'm speaking now. And we cannot escape that. It is always this way. And also, social phenomena are, at least to a certain extent, linguistic. Because we use language to discuss social phenomena. Suppose that you tell a friend of yours that your salary is very low, that you need more money. It is simply a conversation, and it will stay there. But when you tell this to your co-workers, they agree with you, and then you go to the union, and the union agrees with you, and then you begin to discuss, to start salary discussions, what we call paritaria. This is social, and you are using language. You are putting into words a phenomenon that is social, not linguistic. The phenomenon is not linguistic, but you have to use language. Now, something else is that language is a social process that it includes encoding, that is the process of producing language, and decoding, which is the process of interpreting language. And here, I think I mentioned this, but the first eye-opener of critical discourse analysis is to speak of asymmetric relations. All relations of power are asymmetric, except when there are exchanges between close friends, for instance, in which they are equal. Otherwise, it is asymmetric. This exchange we are having now, or this talk I'm producing, is precisely an asymmetric exchange. Because if you want to participate in it, you must do it seriously, following perhaps some of these rules, raising your hand, addressing me in a very respectful way, etc., etc. Not that I'm asking for it, but I'm sure that you will do it. Bueno, And whatever inequalities and asymmetries that are between participants, all of them become obvious in language. I will mention simply some. When we read or listen to text critically, for instance, the use, this is especially seen in media discourse and in political discourse. When you use nominalization, a nominalization of noun metaphor is to make the subject of your sentence a noun instead of speaking of the action. Suppose the lack of water to homeless. It is not the lack of water. Lack of water cannot produce any action because it is not an animate object. But you are concealing why these people couldn't have water, who are responsible for this act, etc., etc. These are nominalization. Also, the use of passive voice. Passive voice also always tries to conceal the real performer of the action. And also, when there are alterations in the semantic fields or the opposing fields or the lexical fields that we mentioned in the second point, when a certain word comes in a text and it does not cohere with the rest of the text. And yes, I will use an example. I don't want not speaking politically, but the use, for instance, I heard one of the candidates using the word negociado en referencia a docentes. Inmediatamente me hizo ruido from discourse analysis, because a negociado in Spanish is illicit business. And normally, I don't mean that teachers cannot engage in illicit business. But normally, this is not the semantic field in which, speaking of teaching, it will appear. No? So it produces noise. That's an example. And bueno, the use of axiological terms, etc., etc. All of them, there are plenty of other resources that must be analyzed if we don't want to be cheating. And we can do plenty of things with language, and also language can do plenty, or does, rather, independently of our wishes, does plenty of things to us. It will remain unknown unless we analyze it critically. And thank you very much. Luckily, we will have finished.
No.
You are free to leave. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.